Hello, everyone. This is the 213th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I welcome back Italian author Mr. Roberto Amorosino as we discuss the Italian national team during the 1974 World Cup. Mr. Amorosino has in the past worked at international organizations in the human resources area between Washington, D.C., Paris, and Rome. He writes for Italian sports website sportmemory.it and is the author of the Italian language book Venti di Calcio. Welcome, Roberto.
Hi, good to see you.
Let's go back in time. Can you describe the status of the Italy national team following the 1970 World Cup and as we come near to the 1974 World Cup?
Well, of course, we all know about the Mexico 1970. It was a great tournament in general, and of course, a great tournament for Italy making the final. So the status after the Mexico 1970, as always, very difficult to make significant changes in the squad. So most of the players stay in the team, very little additions, and very difficult also to keep motivating players. And the result that Italy doesn't qualify for the finals of the European tournament 2 years later. We failed playing Belgium, a very difficult team to play against. They were using our own weapons, meaning mainly defense, and Italy didn't manage to go through, couldn't score one single goal in the return match after losing in Belgium 2-1, I think. After saying this, in reality, the team is still very solid, and this is testified by what happened right after Euro, when we have a long sequence of very good results approaching the new World Cup in 74. See, Italy is still a solid, highly respected team because of Mexico and because of the reality. Very good players at the international level, at top level. So a team that is able to do well both in the qualifying rounds for the World Cup, but also in the different friendlies leading to the World Cup in Germany.
Ferruccio Valcareggi was still in charge of the team, and as you said, he had maintained the nucleus of the 1970s side. So you have the familiar faces Burgnich, Facchetti, Rivera, Mazzola, Riva, Boninsegna, Anastasi, all the players who'd been part of the setup for a number of years. So, how did the Italian media and the public view Valcareggi's handling of the team with the same players?
I would say that again, the success of the Mexico experience, even with all the controversial ending with the Rivera drama not playing in the final, after all, we recognize that being the first team in Europe before Germany, before England, top teams, is clearly a result that is also part of the ability of Valcareggi to put together a strong team on the field. So there's no a lot of stories even after the elimination in the Euro 72. It's pretty clear that we're still going with him, and his choices are pretty much accepted by the media and the fans. Of course, usual division between the Mazzola side versus the Rivera side. Are we going for a team that is still more linked to a traditional way of playing, or are we trying some innovation? Because there's a sense that some teams are changing, that the game is changing, but our system is still considered valid. And Valcareggi, without being, of course, very innovative, at least for the media understanding, is accepted because the team should be able to perform and results are in his favor.
In one of our previous podcasts for the 1970 World Cup, the Italy-Germany discussion, we touched up on the concept of la staffetta between Mazzola and Rivera. Had this problem been resolved, and what had been the tactical switch to allow both of them to play?
There have been some changes. I would say that probably the favorite midfield that Valcareggi is thinking of is made by Benetti, the solidity of the midfield, Capello as a sort of playmaker, and Rivera. These are probably his preferred options in the midfield. Mazzola would represent the ideal solution to sub one of the three with some changes, but also another option that it's becoming more and more popular is to use Mazzola on the side, on the wing, as a fourth midfielder, but on the right side, able to start from the right wing and entering in the middle of the field if and when needed, using his speed and giving a bit of change of pace to the midfield, because both Rivera and Capello were considered quite quick in thinking but slow in the pace.
By now, Dino Zoff was firmly established as Italy's starting goalkeeper, and he would be regarded as one of the greatest goalkeepers in the history of the game. But perhaps this 1972 to 74 cycle was when he was at his peak with his invincibility run. What can you say about him at this point?
So, again, to be sure we know, Enrico Albertosi is the keeper of the World Cup 1970 with Zoff on the bench. And Zoff, 2 years earlier, was the starting keeper of the Euro 68 final. So Albertosi will keep his main role after Mexico World Cup throughout the elimination with Belgium in 72 before the 72 Euro finals. So he's the keeper. And actually he's the keeper also in the next game after being eliminated by Belgium, when we play a friendly in Bulgaria, tying 1-1. A friendly that is also remembered for the first game of Chinaglia in the national team, and Chinaglia scored. Anyway, Albertosi was the keeper even after being eliminated by Belgium in the following game with Bulgaria. Then Zoff starts with Yugoslavia, another friendly played in Turin, that we win 3-1. Another game that Italian fans remember, not only because of the result or because the Zoff going back in the game, not only because we played pretty well, but also because it was very difficult to watch for the Italian fans, because there was a strike of the Italian TV cameraman. So the game was shot on TV, but with a fixed camera from a very high positioning. So it was very difficult to follow, but was still televised. And Italy won 3-1, and Zoff played something that we didn't realize was an historic game. This was the only goal he conceded before the big record he had unbeaten. And so he didn't concede any goal for all the games from that day to going into the opening game of the World Cup 74.
Yeah, so that's like almost a sequence of 2 years.
Correct.
Can you discuss the World Cup qualifiers where Italy did not concede a single goal, as you said, in a group containing Switzerland as the main rivals, as well as Turkey and Luxembourg?
Yes, 12 goals made and 0 correct conceded. So not easy at the same time, because we ended up doing twice 0-0, and one of the two 0-0s was with home game with Turkey in Naples, 0-0. And also we tied in Switzerland, 0-0, something that you can consider a good result on the road. There was a lot of pressure. The turning points were two results, for sure. On our side, definitely going to Turkey was considered a very difficult game to play, and there was a lot of stress before the game, to the point that was quite not a surprise, but was very clear that confidence was needed, and Valcareggi selected a high number of Juventus players. And the way Juventus played with 7 players on the field really reminded of the Juventus approach, the best team in Italy probably at that time. Even one of the players that was never called in the national team, Furino, was playing in Turkey, and that was his second cap with the national team after 45 minutes played in Mexico. And Italy managed to win 1-0. They scored, I think, around 30 minutes with Anastasi, and then we defended in a very hostile environment, but we managed to win 1-0. And the other result that really made Italy qualification possible was the unexpected defeat for Turkey in Luxembourg for 2-0. Really unexpected.
Other than the fact that Zoff was now the starting goalkeeper, other players who emerge in this phase include the likes of Luciano Spinozzi, Francesco Morini, Mauro Bellugi, Romeo Benetti that you mentioned, Il Barone, Franco Causio, Capello, and Chinaglia. And also someone like Roberto Rosato is also phased out around this phase from the team. The summer of 1973 was very important as Italy defeated Brazil and England in friendlies and would also defeat England again at Wembley in November 1973 with Capello's famous goal. As a result of these positive results, were Italy looked upon as potential favorites for the 1974 World Cup?
I mean, the short answer is yes. I mean, there was a lot of optimism because of these results. I mean, the two home games with Brazil and England, of course, they were friendlies, but Italy took them very seriously, both because we were celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Italian Football Association. So there was a sort of a celebration around the event, but also because we were playing, of course, to big names. And beating Brazil, of course, very important. You never know how they come, especially at that time when they were traveling, if they were playing the best team, they were playing with the best possible motivation. We don't know. I remember very well the game. I was at the stadium, and I remember that, of course, they played as Brazil, a good passing, Rivellino, and the others, but Italy motivation was on a different level. And we beat them. And of course, more historic was to beat England for the very first time in our history. I'm part of a generation that most of the discussion with our parents talking about football were going down to this thing of not being able to beat England. We were close a few times, a couple of times, a couple of historic defeats in England, and everything else. Very proud of these games, but the reality was that we never managed to beat England. It was a friendly, but it was important in Turin to win. So it was a magic month for the team. And of course, the history was made really when we won later in November in Wembley, when you could see the difference. It wasn't a friendly. It was just for the record, the friendly. It was a real game. England played very well. Wembley was full. There was a lot of, the usual English tabloid with the same old stories, stereotypes about the Italians. So we really wanted to do well. England was a very good team. We were in defense most of the time. Zoff made 2-3 magic very important saves. We ended up scoring at the end with this Chinaglia counterattack and Capello finishing and beating Shilton. And that was huge. It was the day, I think, of Princess Anne's wedding. So thinking of celebrations, it was even more important for the English to do well. And winning at Wembley was really almost unheard, right? I mean, maybe Hungary and I don't know, maybe one or two other teams were so far in the history of the game were able to win there. So that was huge. And I think gave us also a lot of confidence for what you were saying in terms of believing that, again, building on the defense, we would be able to be competitive.
1974 was also the year of Lazio, who would win the Scudetto. And this would be exemplified with the presence of Chinaglia, Wilson, and Receconi in the team. What can you say about this phenomenon?
It was a phenomenon. I mean, Lazio won the title. Think about this. The year before, they lost the title at the very last game of the season, and they were newly promoted in Serie A. So first season back in Serie A, they lose the title at the last day of the season. The following season, they win. And this is big. It's a team of players that they don't belong to the teams from the north with different backgrounds, some young people, some very experienced player, a good mix, and definitely a great coach able to mix all the different players, also in terms of their not only football style, but the different mentalities, the different personalities. Really something historic for the football in Rome and in Italy. And Lazio is also trying to play something that is closer to what you see outside Italy. Of course, we start living in the middle of these changes of the game where the players from the back line are more involved in the running, in the passing the ball, the Ajax way. And Lazio, from a different perspective, could be very similar. They're very aggressive in the first 20 minutes. They run a lot. And of course, the Valcareggi and the national team cannot ignore these players. I remember when Italy will finalize the list of the 40 players, the preliminary list before being called for the World Cup, there are 6 Lazio players. That is a high number, considering that it's a different time of the game. I remember the Lazio played the whole season, probably using 13, maybe 14 players, not more. And 6 of them are called in the 40-man list for the World Cup. And 3, definitely the 3 more influential, are in the final 22 for the World Cup. As you say, Wilson, the captain, the libero, the defender, Receconi, that is an excellent runner, not only because he was so blonde that you could see everywhere on the field, but he was really going up and down for 90 minutes. And he was probably the closest expression of a Dutch way of playing, and the charisma of the number 9, Giorgio Long John Chinaglia, that is still today is the summary, is the symbol of the Lazio fans as the ultimate fighter and the real leader of the team, but with a strong personality, as we will probably discuss in a minute.
As far as the preparatory friendlies ahead of the World Cup, we already mentioned the match at Wembley in the year 73, in November 73. In 1974, there's just 2. There's a home scoreless tie against West Germany, the hosts, and just before the World Cup in June at Vienna, there's another scoreless tie against Austria. Again, the takeaway is that Dino Zoff still maintained his invincibility, but 2 matches, no goals. How was this looked upon?
Not too much worries. I mean, the Austria game was close to the World Cup, so it was highly criticized because it was not a good game. But at the same time, you always hope it's something to do with the preparation, right? As they say, you don't want to be top form at the beginning of the tournament. You know, it could be a 3 weeks, 4 week tournament. So it's good sometimes not to have a great start. And this is also in the Italian blood. We know very often our last friendly or our last game or even the first game when we are just ready to start, they're not impressive. With Germany, it was a bit different. I think it was around February. It was just a game that we couldn't do much up front. Germany is always a difficult team to play. There was the impression that it would have been a more open game if one goal was coming one way or another, but it didn't. So it stayed on the initial score, but I don't think there was much worrying. I mean, some new entries like Sabadini, the right back, they also played well with Brazil earlier. A bit of experimenting without really changing much.
Let's look at the final 22 selected for the World Cup by Ferruccio Valcareggi. Number one, starting goalkeeper Dino Zoff of Juventus. Backup goalkeepers, number 12, Enrico Albertosi of Cagliari, and number 22, Luciano Castellini of Torino. Defenders, number 2, Luciano Spinozzi of Juventus. Number 3, captain of the team, Giacinto Facchetti of Inter. Number 5, Francesco Morini, Juventus. Number 6, Tarcisio Burgnic, Inter. Number 13, Giuseppe Sabadini, AC Milan. Number 14, Mauro Bellugi, Inter. Number 15, Giuseppe Wilson, Lazio. Midfielders, number 4, Romeo Benetti, AC Milan. Number 8, Fabio Capello, Juventus. Number 10, Gianni Rivera, AC Milan. Number 16, Antonio Giuliano, Napoli. Number 17, Luciano Receconi, Lazio. Number 18, Franco Causio, Juventus. Up front, number 7, Alessandro Mazzola, Inter. Number 9, Giorgio Chinaglia, Lazio. Number 11, Luigi Riva, Cagliari. Number 19, Pietro Anastasi, Juventus. Number 20, Roberto Boninsegna, Inter. And number 21, Paolino Pulici of Torino. From this group, Rivera and Albertosi were already part of the 1962, 1966, and 1970 World Cup squads. And Facchetti, Burgnic, Mazzola, and Giuliano were part of the 1960 and 1970 World Cup squads. And Zoff, Riva, and Boninsegna were part of the 1970 World Cup squad. It's a very experienced squad that has seen many World Cups coming into this one. For the World Cup, Italy are in a group with Poland, Argentina, and Haiti. Of course, Italy would have been looked upon as the favorites to advance from this group. So the first match is against Haiti on June 15th at Munich at Olympiastadion. For this match, we have the following lineup with Italy wearing white. So we have Zoff, Spinozzi, Facchetti, captain of the team, Morini, Burgnic, Benetti, Mazzola, Capello, Chinaglia, he'd be replaced by Anastasi in the 70th minute, Rivera, and Riva. Against all expectations, in the first minute of the second half, from inside the Haitian half, near the middle of the field, Philippe Vorp sent Emmanuel Sanon through in the middle, and he went and he dribbled around Dinozov and scored, and ended Dinozov's record. In the 52nd minute, a cross from the right reached Chinaglia in the box. A Haitian defender touched the ball to the left. It went in the path of Rivera, who shot and scored Italy's equalizer. In the 64th minute, Benetti's shot from the right at the edge of the box was deflected by the Haitian Arsène Auguste into his own net. And in the 78th minute, from the middle, Rivera passed to Anastasi on the left and he shot Italy's third. Italy won this match, but Dino Zoff's record stood at 1,142 minutes. This had been the longest consecutive minutes without conceding a goal. We should also mention that after the match, the Haitian player Jean Joseph failed the dope test and he was sent home. Italy won, but the talking point was the scandal involving Quinaglia after his substitution and the aftermath.
It was really shocking the first half where Italy couldn't score. And actually, it's hard to remember, but Italy didn't have a bad first half, was attacking all the time, was honestly unlucky, and the goalkeeper was excellent. Francion, the Haiti goalkeeper, really saved 2, 3 very good saves. We ended up half time with this unexpected result. It was clear that this was a game very important for the goal difference, even if it was the first one, because the sense was that all three teams, Argentina, Poland, and Italy, would have been able to beat Haiti. So there was a high risk to go to the goal difference. It was very, very important to score as many goals as possible. And probably Italy came back with the determination of changing something in the second half and for going attacking in a way that is not in our blood, ended up in conceding the counterattack that gave Haiti the opportunity to do one of the most unexpected goals in the World Cup history, at least for us. Italy managed, with a bit of luck, to go back in the game, and the key moment that you're referring to was the substitution made by Valcareggi of Anastasi for Quinaglia. The irony is that Anastasi came in when Italy was already 2-1. So the big obstacle of risking of losing or not winning the game was basically over. So, you change the striker when you need to score. So the mechanism or the feeling of Quinaglia was, now that the game is a bit more relaxed, that we should be able to score more. You are taking me out. You make a change, like you make me the only responsible player for the bad performance of the team. And probably Quinaglia was already in the wrong mood vis-a-vis the whole scenario of being the one not belonging to the teams from the north, from the usual suspects of Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus, that they were pretty much forming the national team. Italy has been for almost a generation a team made by players from the three teams plus Gigi Riva, and Quinaglia was the other newcomer. And there was probably a lot of tension, and on the moment, on the spot, Quinaglia didn't accept the substitutions, and he was also his style, his personality. I mean, we know throughout his careers that there have been several episodes where he had arguments with the referees, with play in the Roma derby, or even with his own teammates in certain circumstances. So very different personality to control in the locker room where things were not working his way. A very generous and very genuine player, but at the same time, very difficult to manage to control when things were not easy going. He was like this.
And in fact, the Lazio manager, Tommaso Maestrelli, I think he had to actually come to the Italian camp to calm things down, apparently.
Yes. Well, just to tell you about the relationship, about the two, Maestrelli was a wonderful coach and definitely a wonderful person. And unfortunately he passed away when he was still young, when he was basically actively coaching. And today that also Giorgio Quinaglia passed away, they're buried next to each other. Quinaglia expressed the desire to stay close to his coach / father until now. So they had a special relationship, and Maestrelli was definitely the only one. Not teammates, not family, no his wife. By the way, for our American friends, Giorgio Chinaglia's wife was Connie Eruzione, the sister of Mike Eruzione, the guy that scored in the 3-2 win in the ice hockey final
Oh,
between USA and Soviet Union. So the miracle on ice, the final American goal was scored by Mike Eruzione, that was Connie's brother, and Giorgio Chinaglia married Connie Eruzione. So just for a different story. So yes, Maestrelli went to talk to him, to calm him down, to do whatever possible. Even if there was not in general this strong relationship between the Lazio environment and the national team, because a lot of people thought that Reciconi would have probably deserved more space. The Wilson was younger and more effective than dear old Burnich at that time. But it's very difficult to insert a new player in a system that, as you were saying, was very well established throughout several World Cups.
Italy's next match is against Argentina on June 19th at Stuttgart at Neckarstadion. There are some familiar faces in the Argentinian lineup. We have the likes of Enrique Wolf, Rene Hausmann, Ruben Ayala, Mario Kempes, among others. For Italy, we have the following lineup: Zoff, Spinozzi, Facchetti, Morini. He'd be replaced by Wilson in the 66th minute. Burgnic, Benetti, Mazzola, Capello, Rivera. He'd be replaced by Causio in the 66th minute, Riva, and Anastasi. And for Rivera and Riva, these will be their final caps for Italy. For Rivera, this was his 60th cap. His first cap had been as far back as 1962. And for Riva, this was his 42nd cap. And his first cap had been at 1965. And at this point, he was the record man of goal scorers for Italy. He had scored 35 goals in 42 matches, which is very impressive. As far as the match itself, Argentina took the lead in the 20th minute. From the middle, Carlos Babington sent in a cross in a box towards the left side, and Rene Hausmann volleyed. Italy would tie the match in the 35th minute. A cross from the left was chested by Benetti, and this took a deflection off of Perfumo into the net. And the match ended as a 1-1 tie. It's not over yet. Italy has 3 points, but they have to play against the best team in the group, Poland, for their last match. But after this match, Valcareggi decided to drop Rivera and Riva. What was the public and press reaction for this decision?
These are the consequences of the result versus Haiti. The winning didn't cancel the criticism, and also suddenly we start feeling there's something wrong here. Maybe we're not well equipped for the tournament. And then the Argentina game was really shocking because still today it's hard to believe that the mistake that Valcareggi made in reading the match. Everything can be summarized with one decision. Because of the way Argentina was playing with basically three strikers, Yazalde, Ayala, and Kempes, we ended up with the need to leave Hausmann, a loco Hausmann, very talented player, extremely talented player, to be followed by a midfielder. There were no options. You have three main defenders for three strikers, and then you have Hausmann. So one of the midfielders should follow. But for some reason, he chose Capello to follow man-to-man Hausmann, something that was really easy to realize was not the best thing to do. I mean, you can't think of two players with different paces. Capello very disciplined, but very slow, especially when compared to somebody like Hausmann that was all dribbling and quickness and so far. So the first 20 minutes were a real nightmare. Hausmann was all over the place and creating troubles. And when he finally scored, there was a sort of a liberation. And it was the opportunity to do something logical, like moving Benetti, not really able to control a wing, but at least a bit more solid and nasty and difficult to play against. So Italy managed to go back in the game, but we didn't do well. And as you were saying, we approached the Poland game with a lot of skepticism, knowing that we needed to not to lose. So there was an extra tension and the sense that the choices that he was making, Causio for Rivera, Chinaglia back in the starting 11, were all made by the uncertainty more than for clarity.
And let's remind ourselves that Poland would finish third in this World Cup. They were
Right.
the revelation of this World Cup. You have the big names, Dana, Lato, Jarma, Kasperczak, the goalkeeper Tomaszewski, among others. And of course, Zmuda, who would later play for Verona a decade later.
Right. Yeah, it
And
was a great team. The Poland was a great team. They were respected, of course, because they were there after eliminating England. I mean,
yes,
something huge, of course. And we all remember how they survived in Wembley when they almost won. But at the end of the day, England stayed home and Poland went on. But they also were able to. They had these wonderful players, and they were doing well, and they had a lot of confidence. And so it was a very difficult game to play. I have to say, in retrospect, that Italy didn't have a bad game with Poland.
so this was on June 23rd, again at Stuttgart at Neckarstadion, and we have the following lineup: Zoff, Spinozzi. This would be Spinozzi's 19th and final cap. His first cap had been 1971. Facchetti, Benetti, Morini, Burgnich. This was Burgnich's 66th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1963. Burgnich would be replaced by Giuseppe Wilson in the 33rd minute, and for Wilson, this was his third and final cap, all of them in 1974. Mazzola, this was Mazzola's 70th and final cap for Italy. First cap had been 1963. Capello, Chinaglia, he'd be replaced by Boninsegna in the 46th minute, and Anastasi. Poland would take a 2-0 lead in the first half in the 38th minute. Jarmak headed them ahead. In the 44th minute, Dana doubled the lead. Before the end, in the 85th minute, Franco Causio crossed from the middle and this reached Capello in the box, who scored Italy's goal. But Italy lost 2-1 and they were eliminated as Argentina had a better goal difference. As far as this match, there have been lingering conspiracy theories about the Italians allegedly trying to bribe the Polish team. What is the view from the Italian perspective?
Okay, let me be Italian here. Of course, I'm Italian throughout the story. It would have been easier to convince the referee to give us a penalty. There was clearly a penalty after a few minutes on Anastasi that was not conceded. I don't think it would have changed a lot because Poland had a lot of confidence and they would probably come back, but definitely was a big chance for Italy to go ahead in the game after a few minutes. And then we were not lucky again because while we were suffering, we conceded two goals, two beautiful goals, by the way, by Zarmak as a real center forward and Dana from the distance, two very excellent goals finishing. But both conceded in the space of a few minutes, also very few minutes after the unforced substitution Wilson for Burnage. So again, you have to think of a game in the past when, changing one player in this mechanism was difficult to accept, and Poland took full advantage, and Italy tried to come back in the second half, but very, very slow attacking just because they were asking to attack, and managed to score a goal when there were very few minutes left. And as you said, Italy went out because of the goal difference. After all, Argentina beat Haiti 4-1, having much less opportunities to score than Italy had when we played Haiti. But the reality was that Italy had problems on the field, in the locker room, on the birthdays of the players. Definitely, it was the end of a cycle, and it's so ironic. We didn't know that Argentina was the last game for River Rivera. We didn't know that it was the same for Burnic and also a bit younger player like Spinozzi and Wilson. It was the end of something. And the corruption, I don't know. Of course, I don't know. I heard all stories. I heard even that one Polish player actually took some money, expected to share with the rest of the team, but he didn't. But so these are stories that I'm not able to confirm anything. And Poland did the right thing, whatever they did, because they had a great tournament and definitely left the mark with all their players. They came third, well deserved. They played great games with Germany and so on. So great tournament, great team.
Naturally, this elimination was just like 1966, and the Italian press was unforgiving of Valcareggi and the team, I imagine. What were the most common criticisms of the elimination?
It was the old players, and on the other side, we had eyes full of Holland, Netherlands, Ajax, Michaels, Cruyff. It was like we were living in the past. This is the same time that Inter Milan made to the final of
Right.
the Coppa dei Campioni. They play Ajax, they lose 2-0, but they could have lost 5-0,
Right.
10-0. The difference between the style of playing or using the field, with Surbier, Crawler on the sides, the difference was huge. So we were really old fashioned, but in reality, maybe the difference for a 2-3 week tournament was tired legs and poor team spirit that also didn't help. There's always this question mark for Italy and any other team that when you don't go into the second round, you always think, if you do go into the second round, things may change in the knockout matches. So there's also always this possibility when you have good players, but nevertheless, tired legs, old-fashioned way of playing, and I think more importantly that the team spirit wasn't there at all.
To circle back to 1973, some journalists felt that the team reached its peak in that summer of 1973. And even Dino Zoff felt that had the World Cup taken place in 1973, Italy would have won. Was that the general consensus?
Yes, because of the results we were saying earlier. All the opportunities we had to play in 73 were good results, good games, and good spirit. But everything disappeared a few months later when we approached the World Cup and when we were there. You need to have a chemistry among the team, and definitely wasn't there. And this was the main thing. I'm sure players are still convinced that to have two or three groups into the locker room with different views and Valcareggi not really able to do well, and probably was impossible to do better to create the team spirit to overtake the difficulties.
In researching, I read about the fact that there was some debates whether Italy should persist with Catenaccio or try the Dutch total football or at least a more attacking system. Do you remember these debates?
Yes, because there was the thing, because the season was Lazio won. Lazio won the title, and Lazio was playing a different way. Didn't have to. The left back was definitely much more involved in the game than in the Italian. They were more aggressive. They were able to put pressure on the other teams. They were not coping, but they were genuinely more energetic than the classic Italian way of playing. So the debate was there to use more fresh legs. The season was also telling that, for example, Pulisic, the Torino striker, was somebody else that maybe we could have used more. I think he played actually in the friendly in Turin versus England when we won for the first time. So there were some options, right, of making really Chinaglia a leader of the team, not just a player. Chinaglia was not the type of player that would accept or would understand to be one out of 11. He needed to feel that his teammates trusted him. And at that point, he would have been able to give everything for the cause. But this was not the case in the national team, where you had Riva, where you had Rivera, where you had Mazzola, huge personality with huge track record, and very difficult to find the right approach. But the debate that was needed, the change was already there. But there was just hope this was the final stage to do well for a group of players that we knew had to go after the World Cup.
I read that apparently a few years later, Giorgio Chinaglia disclosed that the 19 other members of the squad, except Facchetti, Rivera, and Mazzola, had decided to tell Valcareggi to drop Rivera and Mazzola. However, in the last minute, the other players backed down. Is there any truth to this?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Chinaglia didn't keep things for himself, so I wouldn't have. And I'm sure there was a lot of feeling, even in the clubs, about this idea that running, not really dividing the workload among players in the midfield, was not accepted anymore. In the 50s, in the 60s, the midfielders accepted to some extent to run up and down to preserve the most talented players in order to make them able to do something magic. Rivera was that type of player. He had Lodetti in AC Milan, as they were saying, running for him. And of course, when you end up not making the difference, you question if it's worth to have an extra midfielder that is not able to make the difference. You still need to run for him. So, yes, it's a possibility. And also, he was not in great shape. I mean, that was not, it was pretty obvious. When Mazzola, on the other hand, he was one of the most positive players in the 2, 3 games we played in the World Cup. At least he gave everything he had, was generous, he was trying to make difference, to score, despite starting from the wing side of the field, he did well. And the usual thing, Mazzola, best player on the field, it doesn't mean you win the game. Rivera, best player on the field, you probably win the game because of the way he was touching, passing, creating opportunities was always. But if he was not the best player on the field, sometimes you felt you were playing with 10 men.
In the aftermath, Valcareggi left his post to be replaced with the veteran Fulvio Bernardini. Was the change in management and an end of a cycle inevitable?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Bernardini was not young, but he was young in his mind and mindset vis-a-vis football strategy. Really an innovation guy. And he had an immediate impact, and the change was very welcome. It not only came with new ideas, but with new players, with very different approach. in selecting players and everything else. He didn't have any geographic restrictions. He didn't pay attention to geopolitics in selecting the players. He gave space to players that you wouldn't expect to be called in the national team, something that you see more these days. So he was really new and fresh and welcome at that time and highly respected.
With this World Cup, part of Italian calcio history ended as Rivera, Mazzola, Riva, Burgnic, Spinozzi all played for the Azzurri for the last time. How was this felt, or was it what the public demanded?
Well, it was a failure, it was a disaster. Similar and different at the same time than what we had in 1966. Now, in retrospective, when we're close to missing the third World Cup in a row, we were there. We were there as one of the 16 teams, and now you struggle to make it to an event that is going with maybe 46 teams. So everything looks different from here now. But at that time was clearly a failure. Once again, exactly like in 66, Italy was able, because of the system, able to come back strong. 66, 2 years later, we are European champions in 68. So really something special. And the same in 74. After the 74 World Cup, Italy rebuilt the team through Bernardini and then Berzot, and the team is the one that 4 years later in 78 has a wonderful World Cup in Argentina. There's a game that it's very important to mention for me, and this is almost the beginning of the Bernardini time in November, I think 74, when we play in the Euro qualification with the Dutch in Rotterdam in November 74. Can you imagine a team to be rebuilt playing the best team in the world? They lost the final, but they were considered
Also,
the best.
Poland in the same group.
And Poland again, right? We are forced to play a different game, right? And this game in Rotterdam is really something that I would watch again and again because Italy played with a spirit that totally unexpected, accepted the battle.
That was
The
Antonioni's first match, right?
Antonioni, yes, the team was really, a lot of difficult choices. He chose Orlandini to play on Cruyff, Antonioni, this elegant number 10, with the keys of the midfield and the experience of Anastasio and Boninsegna up front, two new center backs, two new number 2 and number 3. And Italy played very well and took the Dutch by surprise, going 1-0 up. And again, no complaints, but there was a penalty on Boninsegna that was not conceded by the referee from Soviet Union, that by the way was the same referee of the Italy-Haiti game, where he didn't have anything controversial there, but he didn't concede this penalty. So we ended up losing 3-1 because the Dutch really changed the pace and we couldn't resist. So they were too much for us. But it was a very important game to recreate the spirit and understanding that Italy was still competitive, playing the best teams. So we had good games, as you were saying, with Poland and Holland at home. Not winning, but still at least being able to. And slowly with Berzot, we recreate a team that built around Juventus players managed to go to the Argentina World Cup, and again eliminating England in the qualifications was a big thing. Now seems at that time it was thought as possible, doable. But can you imagine these days you have England in the group and qualify for the World Cup, and then we went to Argentina and the rest is history.
In closing, how is this World Cup performance regarded by football historians after more than 50 years? Is it even remembered in any way?
Well, it's remembered because it was not a good a good result, a good experience. So nothing worth remembering in terms of results or anything else. It was a failure. Italy didn't perform, didn't qualify. So I'm very disappointed because at that time, of course, there was a lot of passion around the team in Germany with the Italian community. So playing in Stuttgart, I mean, it was a really sad tournament for the Italians in Germany, abroad, all the ones that they came from France and Belgium to follow Italy. And so it was very disappointing from that perspective not to be able to do well in a tournament. But, that's football, that's life. And their children managed to see Italy winning the World Cup in 2006 in Germany.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Roberto, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on Italian football history.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a big pleasure to be with you and you all listening to
Thank you.
football.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye. Ciao.